Good morning, everybody. There are several aims that I would like to cover today. The first one is I'd like to explore top tips and strategies to support a smooth home to school transition, and vice versa, thinking about the morning transition to school as well. I'd like to explore masking and give helpful tips to support your families, support your children at the end of the school day. I'd like us to think about what we do in school to help support and nurture our children that we work with. I would like to encourage you to think about routines and the ability to develop those routines. And I would like us to think about how you can work with schools to ensure a consistent approach and good communication methods. So thinking about the term masking and what that might mean for your families, it may be a term that you've heard of, or it may be, when we start talking about it, that may be behaviours that you certainly recognise. But just to kind of give you some context, the term masking is used to describe when an individual consciously or subconsciously, so it could be without even knowing that they're doing that, hide and mask certain traits in order to fit into society's norms. So this can be an incredibly draining process and can also be linked to poorer general well-being. So it can have a real impact on mental health. Masking can also be referred as camouflaging. You may notice the impact of masking in your child. So often this can be seen when a child's had a good day at school, but then will come home and have really tricky times regulating. And this can often seem out of the blue because it's followed a period of calm and a period where the young person's appeared relatively well regulated. Now, this is really tricky, and this can often lead to those really challenging conversations that you might have with school, where school are telling you everything's fine, everything's been fine during the day, the child's been able to engage in learning, has been able to take part in normal transitions, has gotten well with other peers, they're not aware that there are any underlying issues, and then you've picked your child up, and then in a relatively short period of time, you see some really different behaviours, and that can lead to all sorts of relationship challenges as well between the school and our families. So I just want to unpick that a little bit more and just think a little bit more about what that might mean and what that might look like. So what it would look like in school and what it might feel like to the young person. So it may feel like, or it may look like, the young person is forcing themselves to make eye contact. We know that that's often something that our young people will struggle with. Yet, as our young people grow older, they know that that fits into that term of social expectation. And so during the day, knowing that expectation, some of our young people will really, really try and kind of fit into that expectation and will really try and make eye contact with adults, particularly when they're speaking to them. So some young people will take that a step further, particularly as they get older, and they'll actually really be monitoring how much eye contact they're making during the day as well, with a real aim of trying to fit in as much as possible. They may change the way that they speak at school, so it might be about the tone that they use. It might be that they really make an effort to be less direct. It may be that they think much more about the phrases that they use, and it might be some other changes that you would notice as well, which is really quite different to sort of what you would expect to see at home. So the young person may appear to be more animated, and may be less animated, but certainly a difference around the way that young person communicates. At school, we may also see behaviours around kind of suppressing, reducing or hiding stimming. So you may be aware that your children will stim, and that will help them to regulate and to make meaning of the environment that they are in. And sometimes what we see in school is that young people will switch and will either mask less, will either stim less, or may switch to a less noticeable form of stimming. So as an example, that might be taking their pen and kind of fidgeting with a pen, or moving a hand, or clicking, or something that actually just gives them less feedback than what their normal way of stimming would give them. It may also be that we see young people who reduce visible reactions to sensory sensitivities. So by that I mean that you would know that your young people would, if they were touched, that might cause them to flinch, and they would certainly feel that as quite a heavy pressure. But actually within school they would mask that sensory element, and then would not flinch or would not wince when touched, and you would notice the difference. I think we would also see a difference in communication. So you might notice that actually communication at home is quite limited, or actually is more so than what you would expect in school. And we have young people who try and mask their needs, and will actually really think long and hard about planning out conversations throughout the day. So they'll almost plan out their every interaction that they have throughout the day, who they're going to see, what conversation they're going to have, what are they going to see, what do they expect the response to be. And you can imagine how absolutely exhausting that would be to plan out the day to such kind of fine detail. We may also see in school that young people ask more questions, or less questions, or may appear to kind of make themselves more interesting or interested in certain subjects, which normally you would know that they're just not, is not part of their normal everyday interests. And also we would see a part of masking would be that a young person would not share what their interests are, and again that's kind of to do with wanting to fit in and social norms, and that they wouldn't want to be perceived as unusual, because sometimes some of our young people can be interested in a wide range of things which their peers of the same age may not be. So that kind of gives us a little bit of an understanding around why sometimes schools find it really difficult to understand that a young person is masking, because what they're seeing are young people that are really almost thriving in those settings, that they're able to communicate with their peers, that they understand social norms, and that they're able to fit into those social norms. So what this might look like at home then, so if we've already talked about how exhausting masking can be. When the child arrives home, a young person who has been masking throughout the day and has kind of put in a variety of different strategies to cope with the demands of school, you might see a very different set of behaviours. And you might see that your child becomes distressed, and that can look at a whole variety. That could be shouting, screaming, banging, throwing things, kind of moving things around the bedroom, swearing, really kind of those hurting you, hurting other family members, breaking things, those kind of really big behaviours of concern. You might also see mental and physical exhaustion, and that obviously stems from the day of masking and just how hard that is to keep up throughout the school day. And the school day is really long, if you can imagine trying to mask throughout the whole of the school day. You may see a mental health decline and difference. You may see self-harm, suicide ideation. You may see isolation. You may see young people who come home and disconnect from others, from family members. You may see a loss of self-sense, a sense of self as well. So suddenly losing interest at things that they, would ordinarily be interested in. And you may see low self-esteem as well. So, young people who just don't value themselves, who can't identify what their strengths are, who kind of really become lost. And this can lead to really tricky conversations with school, because you're both seeing totally different sides and totally different aspects of behaviour. And so it wouldn't be uncommon for schools and home to report completely different behaviours, and that can lead to kind of really misunderstandings between the families and school, and particularly where schools and professionals may not understand masking, may not understand the characteristics of masking, and certainly don't see the impact of masking at home. And what this can lead to is it can lead to young people, professionals almost not believing that the young person has a specific set of needs because they don't see it in the context that they work. It may lead to misdiagnosis or late diagnosis, and it may lead to those mistrust as well, and breakdown of relationships between family, because we neither parties kind of see what the other party sees. And so, you know, it's really not as simple as, well, they don't do it here, so everything's fine, because obviously, you know, we need a really holistic, joined up approach, and actually, if masking is occurring and if these behaviours are occurring, then professionals and families need to work together to be able to best support the young person. So I want us to think about the process of supporting a young person who has been masking throughout the day and has kind of, you know, come as really spent all their day trying to fit in with the social expectations around school and the demands of school. And it's often really tempting when we collect young people to talk to them about the day, to ask them how their day has been, to respond to their comments about the day, and to, you know, kind of really kind of unpick that and kind of draw a line under it. And actually what's really important at that time is to really focus on connecting with each other. It's not the time for correcting. So, you know, if things have happened during the day, that's probably not the best time to kind of, you know, reflect and help children process that. It's really a time for connecting and acknowledging the impact of masking, and really trying to kind of focus all of our time and efforts on reducing that impact. I think it's really important that we think about how information is shared. So thinking about my school and how we share communication with our parents and carers. We have a really individualised approach, and so we speak to families around what they want communication to look like, and we come up with our own communication plan. And that's really important because the majority of our children travel in a taxi to school, but we do have some parents and carers who do collect their children, and it wouldn't be at all appropriate for us to dissect the day, particularly the negative and the difficult parts of the day, on collection with the parent and the child kind of stood listing, and that again impacts on you know, self-esteem and the child's sense of worth. So it's really important that we speak to schools and talk about what the communication plan might be. It's really important that information is shared with you in a really timely manner, because you need to know what's happened during the school day, and vice versa as well. So it's really important to establish those times of the day where information is going to be shared, and also making sure that key people are sharing that information as well. I think it must be really frustrating as a parent to hear you know, kind of an aspect of the day, but actually for you to ask some questions and the professional not be able to actually fully explain to you what happened, or you know, kind of how that incident was resolved, or what we learned from it. So it's really important that you have the right person. And sometimes what is useful is to have a key contact within school. So again, that would form part of the communication plan, that you would work with the school and you would agree that you'd have a key person who would find out everything that there is to know about that day, equally probably the person that's been with your child for the day, and is able to answer any additional questions that you have. It's really important to decide the time of the day that the information is going to be shared. So ideally before you collect the child, so is there an opportunity for you to have a couple of minutes before your child comes out, or for there to be a phone call just kind of towards the back end of the afternoon, but certainly not appropriate to be having those conversations in front of the child. And just to be really mindful of shame and the impact of shame. That is such a strong, intense feeling, and to ensure that good communication between a parent and school and passing over messages doesn't actually cause further shame and impact negatively on the relationships. So relationships certainly between the young person, school and home, but equally vice versa as well with the parent and school, and certainly doesn't impact on the next day. You know, we want to bring each day to a close. So this is a really old analogy, but it's still really good, and it's still really valid for what we see in schools and for what our parents tell us that they see at home. So thinking about a really kind of, it's called the Coke bottle effect, but we can think of it as anything that's kind of fizzed up inside a bottle. And if we can think of our children as the bottle, and each time something difficult happens during the day, that bottle takes a little shake. And so that can be absolutely any stressful event, and bearing in mind what we've already shared this morning, that, you know, if a young person has a really small window of tolerance, sometimes stressful events are very different in the way that we perceive them as adults. And so sometimes those stressful things can be really quite minute to us, but actually causes distress to young people. And so on the surface, it may seem that actually not much is happening. And that again can cause frustrations between family and home, because the school may be saying, actually, I've had a really good day, I've got on really well with everybody, they've managed to complete all their learning, and that appears to be a successful day. But actually under the surface, there have been lots of things that have impacted on that young person's mental health. So some of those things could just be the demands of school. It could be things like wearing a uniform and there not being any reasonable adjustments to that. So the young person is having to sit all day in a uniform, which is just really, really uncomfortable. It may be that they are sitting in a classroom that is noisy and distracting. It may be that they are sat with peers who they don't feel that they can be themselves with, and therefore are having to mask. We talked about what that might look like earlier. It might be the volume within the classroom, it may be the heat within the classroom, it may be just that it's really busy, and that, you know, a classroom of an average size has lots of young people up and about, moving around, and that can just be really difficult for some of our young people. And all that together can create anxiety, and as the day goes on, that anxiety grows. And lots of our young people are able to hold it together during the time at school, and can appear to be managing really well. And obviously, as that goes on, if we're thinking about this Coke bottle effect, that actually every time something happens, the noise, the volume, the uniform, the demands, the learning, all those things all cause that bottle to be shaken up and to become you know, kind of a point where there is going to be an explosion when that cap comes off. And then obviously by the time the child comes home to you and the lid comes off, you see the explosion. And that, I hope, it is a really simple way of explaining masking in the sense that actually it's often not seen during the day. Our young people become really good at it, become really good at fitting into school and the expectations, but actually the you know, all those things that impact on a young person's anxiety levels all kind of do take an impact on you know, on that young person throughout the school day. And so we often think about this iceberg, and the bit that we see is often the tears, the shouting, the anger, the biting, the real kind of demand avoidance, the rage. Those are the big behaviours that we see. But actually, under the surface, the bits that we don't see are, you know, the needs around social and communication, levels of anxiety, stress, shame, tiredness and exhaustion, discomfort, sadness, some really, really huge emotions there that actually can be really easily missed throughout the school day. So I'd like us to think about what we can do then. What can we do to support our young people when they are collected from school or when they arrive home from school? What can we do to create an opportunity to really kind of let some of that steam out in a really positive way that doesn't end in those big behaviours and that big explosion? So I want to talk about the power of walking. So really simple, no cost, you know, everybody can do it. Really thinking about what is a really good brainstem calming activity. So anything which is rhythmical or repetitive is really good for the brainstem. So when we've had a really stressful day, that pattern of walking and repetitiveness, particularly if you go out for quite a lengthy walk, can have a really positive impact on a young person's ability to regulate and transition back home calmly. So if you are collecting a primary aged child from school, it would be a really positive thing to think about that routine and not to rush home, but to really think about how you can build in some brainstem calming activities as part of your everyday transition. And we know that walking improves mood, and we know it improves mental health. So really thinking about the area that you live in and the opportunities to walk and collect your children, and then to walk them home on a route that might see you going past a park, or you know, just taking maybe a longer route home, just to really provide that opportunity to unpack the day. It's really important that we think about basic needs, and so just thinking about when you collect your child from school, thinking about, you know, are they going to be hungry? Are they going to be thirsty? Will they have been to the toilet just before they've left school? And just really kind of planning in that routine just to make sure those basic needs are met. It may be that this is something that you need to speak to school about and you know, thinking about routines throughout the day as well. So some of our young people will need additional snacks during the day, will need regular water breaks, because their bodies might not tell them when they're hungry or when they're thirsty. So it's really important that actually the adults kind of take the lead on that, and we look out for those signs that may indicate that a child needs a snack or some water. So think about whether that would be useful in collection of our children. Would it be useful to take something with you so that they can have a snack and they can have a drink as you start that transition home? Grounding exercises are really useful. Really useful again, that they are easily adapted to whatever environment you happen to be in. They're free, they don't need resources or materials, and it's a really positive thing that you can do together as well. So I would also think about that routine at the end of the day, building in some grounding activities. And so what grounding activities aim to do is support children to emotionally regulate and ultimately become more resilient as well, because they, you know, if we start children at a very young age knowing of grounding exercises and giving them the skills that they need to manage their own mental health, then actually they have better coping strategies and therefore are more resilient. And so these grounding exercises can really help children to manage times of stress and improve their mental health. And although we're talking today about the transition home or to school, these can actually be used at any time of the day. They can be used in the family home, or you know, if we share with school the grounded exercises that you found particularly useful with your children, then it's something that can be used at times throughout the day as well. And again, just it slows down and reduces some of that pressure that we've talked about that can build throughout the school day. And as we've said, it helps children to manage anxiety and can be done anywhere with no additional equipment. So really easy and accessible to all. So one thing that is a really, really easy one to do is to kind of play the 5, 4, 3, 2 game. And so what you would do is together, you on collection, so when you're walking home, you would think about 5 things that you can see. So you would literally look around your environment and just be picking out, and it can be absolutely anything, just anything within the environment that where you're present. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things that you can feel. And those grounding exercises are really useful in just connecting with each other, but also connecting with reality and really kind of bringing you back to focus. So grounding exercises are no quick fix. It's not going to be something that you're going to do once and you're going to see a huge difference straight away, but they should be part of a regular self-care routine, and it's really positive for adults as well as young people. So grounding exercise can be used at school during transition and at home. They can be used any time of day or night, and it really helps us to engage in our senses. So it helps us to focus on things that we can see, feel, hear, touch, and by concentrating on our sensory experiences instead of our anxious thoughts, children can calm down more quickly and gain an appreciation for the little details around us, and it just takes the focus away. So in other words, they can kind of get out of their heads and just back into the real world. So it really interrupts thought patterns. So really kind of, anxiety really, it takes over, doesn't it? And it really, young people become really preoccupied. And so it really interrupts those patterns. So anxiety often stems from repetitive negative behaviours, but grounding exercises really gives our children a mental break by interrupting these thought patterns and redirecting the thought to something more tangible. And the fact that you're doing it together is really, really positive. It also helps build confidence as well. So it teaches children that they can manage their anxiety and that those thoughts they are in control of those thoughts. So these can be done from a really young age, and the obviously the more these become entrenched in those really positive routines, the better. So building confidence. So as children become more proficient in using grounding exercise to manage anxiety and stress, they'll gain confidence in their ability to cope with the challenging circumstances around them. So during the school day, they can use them when you're not there, but equally use them, whenever they feel that they need. And it almost becomes like a little kit bag, so a little kit bag of tools that they have, so that they're able to pull out the correct exercise at the right time as they feel that they need that. So it's also really useful. Another exercise that you could try is to create a visual focus. So there's a little game called Overdescribe. I'm sure there's a much better name for it, but we call it Overdescribe. And it can be used, it's a regulation activity. Again, can be used anywhere at any time in any environment. And again, it's the idea is it's just bringing children away from their really anxious thoughts that are overpowering to the present moment. And so what you would do is you would choose an object from the surrounding area and you would describe it in great detail. And it can be absolutely anything. It can be something physical that you happen to have in your pocket. It can be something literally that you're walking past. And, you talk about the size, the shape, the texture, its positioning, what it's used for. Just literally, you just draw your focus. And that can just be really useful, again, in grounding children who've had a really, really difficult day. So auditory grounding exercises are equally as useful and just really, really part of kind of, you're probably really familiar with the term mindfulness, and we talk a lot about mindfulness, and mindfulness is so useful in just bringing young people back to the present moment. And there are all sorts of YouTube videos, mindfulness colouring and exercises that you can find very, very easily on the internet, and all those things help to just, again, it's just about bringing back to the present moment and just not allowing those anxious thoughts to overcome our thoughts and feelings. So auditory grounding exercises could be just literally, and if we just do it together now, just as an example, we're going to take 30 seconds, we're going to close our eyes, and we're just going to focus on what we can hear. So let's just have a little go. Okay, just bring you back. So you probably heard things there that you were not consciously aware of before we asked you to really focus. And that's exactly what will happen when you are taking part in these auditory grounding exercises. So again, just really kind of takes the thoughts away from the anxious thoughts to the present moment. And you know, afterwards, once you've had your 30 seconds, you can talk about what you heard, talk together about what you heard, and again, it creates a lovely opportunity to connect with each other as well. And you know, perhaps you can you know, list them and make it into a bit of a game, and so that actually decide, you know, you can decide that there might be some things that one person heard that another person didn't hear, and it's a really, really easy game to play, in the sense that, again, can be done anywhere at any time of day or night. So in a similar way, I'd like to talk about some opportunities to kind of bring touch and connection into our grounding or mindfulness exercises. So a couple of examples would be that if you were to invite your child to explore a variety of textures surrounding them, so you could do this in the form of a feely bag, and you could put different things in the feely bag, and again, it would just be about touching and feeling and exploring and then describing and trying to guess what it might be. Equally, if your children have got like a soft or comforting blanket maybe, or if they like therapy or slime or fidget toys, those all have a place as part of really kind of grounding and bringing young people back to the present moment. You could also encourage your child to close their eyes and gently place the right arm on the left shoulder, and gently applying firm pressure to, you know, to really kind of really again bring the thoughts to the feeling of the pressure, and then literally guide them, let them guide slowly and move their hand, exploring the sensations of their clothing, to really think about how does it feel on their skin, how does it feel on their you know, how does their muscles feel as they kind of push their arm past them, what can they feel on their bodies, and equally using the rhythm of the heart rate as well, for them to actually, when they get down to their pulse, to really kind of take a moment to really just feel that, and just to be aware and in the moment. So our sense of smell is really useful in grounding children, and encouraging them to be more mindful and aware of the present moment. So again, similar to what you can hear or what you can see, what can you smell? It may be useful to explore homeopathy as well. There are specific smells that really are linked with reducing anxiety and creating an uplifting mood. So some of those being lavender, chamomile, basil, frankincense, all can be used very safely to reduce levels of anxiety, and can be used in a variety of different ways within the house, sprayed onto a tissue, to again make very accessible. So it might be something that you want to take to school with you, or you want to have a spray if you are driving in the car, or within the child's kind of preferred areas in the house as well. So in school we play the alphabet game, and this is really useful. It's a fun way of, again, just bringing back to the present moment and reducing that level of fear and anxiety. So it, again, can be played in any environment, so really useful for that transition back home, so walking home from school or driving home from school, and it really is incredibly simple. So you would literally work your way through the alphabet, and you would just say what you can see, and see whether you can find something beginning with A, B, C, and just see how far you can get. And it's again great for connecting with each other, and really good just reducing those really kind of anxious thoughts. So breathing is really, really important, and it's something that we don't teach children how to do, and it's powerful. And actually, if we can slow our breath work down, then actually that has a direct impact on our heart rate and our feelings of anxiety. So as part of teaching children self-care techniques, it's really important. And so this is something, again, that you can do, and it's about teaching children how to do it and you doing it together, and it just becoming part of your normality, and that actually it's something that your children see you doing, and it's something that they would see professionals at school doing. It could be built into very easily into their strategies for helping them regulate during the school day, even when it looks like children are not in distress. So maybe masking, it's really useful just to teach children how to manage their own mental health, and obviously when we're teaching children to manage their own mental health, we're teaching them really vital life skills that they will use throughout their lives really effectively. And we want to create that sense of normality. So if they see you doing it and they see staff at school doing it, then it becomes just what everybody does. So dead easy, literally place one hand on their, ask them to place one hand on their chest and one hand on their tummy, and teach them just to pay close attention to their breathing and what does the body feel like as they breathe really deeply as well. Encourage them to breathe all the way in, all the way out. It may be that you can, there's all sorts of different names for it, all sorts of different breathing patterns, different numbers, different number of breath in, different numbers of breath out, but just count in for 5 counts. So if we all try, out for 5 counts. And if you were to do 5 of those 5 in and 5 out breaths, then that slow, deep breathing tells the body that I am safe. It sends a message to the brain about safety. It's really vital that the mind and the body has that connection, and breathing does that. And so if we're able to slow breathing down and and teach children how to manage their feelings at any point, then that's a really useful tool for them to have. As we kind of approach the end of my presentation, you'll notice that this purposefully comes late into the presentation. And I briefly touched upon it at the beginning, about the importance of not rushing into unpacking the day, asking them about their day. What did you do? What went well? What didn't go so well? Why did you do that? That needs to be left. And we've talked a lot about the power of connection first, connection rather than correction. That's really, really vital. But I want to talk about the power of silence. And sometimes it's absolutely fine to just enjoy silence and don't rush to fill the space. It's actually really important when we're thinking back to that Coke bottle and how fizzy that Coke bottle is on picking young people up at school time. It's really important that we allow time to decompress. So it's just not rushing into any conversation, not rushing into any mindfulness game, any kind of grounding activity. Sometimes it might be just enough to just have a period of silence, and actually just for you to both be okay with that and to both know that that's actually what is needed, and that's really useful. Because if you can imagine, if you are already that fizzy Coke bottle and then there's just lots of questions about your day, how's it gone, why did you do that, why did you not do that, your teacher said this, that's just overwhelming, and again adds to those really big feelings that we saw underneath that iceberg. So for some children, a period of silence is needed and really useful. So it may be that you just walk hand in hand, if you know, with little ones, again, a lovely way of connecting with each other, and just enjoy that moment's silence. And it's really, you know, for you to think about all the strategies that we've kind of talked about today, and to think about what would a good after school routine for your child look like, and to just kind of pick and choose what would work, try some out, you know, investigate some other ones that you think actually based on your child's interests and needs and age, and just find something that works for you, but to acknowledge that actually, oh, I think my child maybe masking during the day, and have those powerful conversations with school, and then, you know that you therefore need to adapt that routine and think about planning it carefully, so that it becomes a routine and not something that you just try once or twice. But power of silence is really important, and you know, and it's okay. Sometimes we try and fill all the space with conversation, and we haven't seen our children all day, so actually we want to know that they're okay, and we want to know that they've had a great day, and that's for us and our needs, but actually what the child might need at that time is just time and space. So anything that you can do to connect at this moment in time is really useful. So if they're very little, they'll probably be more into the idea of holding hands with you, but holding hands, linking little fingers, you know, as they get older, sometimes they won't hold your hands fully, but they might be okay about just linking little fingers as you walk, you know, greet them with a hug, you know, that deep pressure, again, really comforting and really calming, and is a really positive aspect of positive touch, that just helps them to feel grounded. It's really important that we think about reducing the demands at times of high anxiety, and this is really important for school as well. And so it may be that following today that you want to have a conversation with some of those key professionals in school to talk about the level of demands, and about at times, when appropriate, reducing those to be able to really create that balance of anxiety, so that it doesn't build and build and build throughout the day. And so it's important to, you know, think about the demands when we get home from school as well, and what they look like, what the level of demands look like within your household as well. So it's important to ensure regular breaks throughout the day. So again, speaking to the professionals at school about what that looks like, what do sensory breaks look like throughout the day, what does just space away from the busy classroom, the hustle and bustle and the movement and the noise and the heat and all those things that can really impact on our young people's window of tolerance. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop that fizz from building, and it's really important that you collaboratively work with the schools to make a plan of what that looks like for your child, but equally what you're both going to do, so it's managed really effectively during the day, even if schools are saying, well, we just don't see it. The fact that you're seeing it at home means it is happening, and really planning a way of supporting the young person to manage that on a long-term basis. And also looking out for and noticing those subtle warning signs in their presentation that will tell you that they're becoming overwhelmed and need support to regulate. And that's so important, that parents know their child so well. You see them so much more than schools, you know, so really working with schools to really talk to them about what that looks like. What does masking for your child look like? What should they expect to see? But equally, you know, point them in the right direction of, you know, look, could you look into this? Could you educate? Could you provide some training for your staff? But equally, could we put a plan together of early support as well, so support that can be put in place during the day, so that we're trying to reduce those levels of anxiety building. So it's really important as well that we're thinking about the environment, so the environment that children are transitioning home to, and how busy it is. So how can kind of that afternoon, early evening routine be adapted to create a quiet, calm, tranquil environment that aids relaxation, and kind of it creates an opportunity for the children to unpack the feelings of the day in a way that doesn't look like an explosion. So, you know, think about how sensory equipment can be used, so weighted blanket, yoga ball, squish, ear defenders, putty, slime, Play-Doh, any kind of those things, and what that might, how they could be used at home and at school throughout the day to you know, best support the children that we work with. And you know, I appreciate that it's really difficult, because actually in the family home there are often other siblings who may also have their own needs, either because of their age and stage, or because they may have other SEN difficulties. There may be other animals, there may just be really noisy, busy environment. Family homes often are very busy, noisy in general, but it's really important to kind of acknowledge that some of our children will need a quiet, calm space to be able to go and just kind of you know, really kind of come down from the stressful school environment, and that's absolutely no disrespect to any school. The demands of school, the expectations, it's just a lot for some of our children that we work with and you care for. So thinking about what home currently looks like. Is it busy? Reflect on it. Is it busy? Is it noisy? You know, and actually, what could you do to kind of really help? And equally, thinking about school in that transition to school, say in the morning, what does entry to school look like? You know, because actually school playgrounds are really busy places. The morning is really noisy. You know, bringing everybody through the same entrance is really big. You know, is it possible for schools to think about some reasonable adjustments around that morning, about what that might look like? So, you know, maybe bringing in a different entrance, maybe having a great start to the day or a soft start to the day, where you know, there may be some sensory circuits or some sensory activities that the young person can go and do before then transition into class, when class is actually calmer and settled and everybody's where they're supposed to be. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you ever so much for listening. I hope you found it useful, and I think we're going to hand over for questions now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Claire. That was such a good presentation, so much detail in there. As expected, we've had absolutely loads of questions coming in, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. So first one, my 5-year-old masks at school, which makes the school believe that everything is fine. Yet his report card has all the ADHD tendencies he's experiencing, like not being able to follow instructions, distracted, making easy mistakes in work. Do you think I should address this again with the school?
Oh, absolutely. So we talked about that, didn't we, quite early on in the presentation, and that's the challenge of masking, that actually it can lead to misdiagnosis or late diagnosis or no diagnosis, and that leads to then children really struggling in school without the level of support that they're going to require. So at 5, I would say, if you are already recognising some of the things that we've talked about today, it would be absolutely well worth just making sure that the school has got someone that really understands masking and what it looks like, and what it feels like, and equally what what it looks like also at the end of the day for you and your family. And absolutely talking to the school about how they can progress with support and assessment, because at 5 you've got a really good early diagnosis is incredibly helpful, because obviously children then are able to access a level of support at a much younger age, rather than kind of rolling through the system. And the young people that I work with have often been to several different schools, maybe a short stay centre or a PRU, might have been to another local authority school before they end up with us in independent SEN provision. And often they've had like gaps out of school and poor school attendance, and they've had partial timetables and all sorts of things where actually needs haven't really been able to be met, and often it's because the needs are quite unclear. So I think actually you've got a really good opportunity there, and absolutely I would explore it further.
Brilliant answer, thank you, Claire. Next question: would you have any advice on routines to help a school refusing child to get into school in the morning?
Oh, it's really hard, isn't it? And actually this becomes more of an issue as young people get older as well. So I think it's really it's unpicking, isn't it? It's unpicking what the challenges are. So what are the reasons? What are the reasons for the young person not wanting to go? What demands are particularly tricky? And having those open and transparent conversations with the school, and asking for some reasonable adaptations that will better to support the young person to be able to access a learning environment. So we talked about a soft start, what that we sometimes call a soft start or a great start, or it can be called bright, but essentially a different start, a more tailored start to the day that would suit your young person's needs. So what is it that where's the fear coming from? So is it going into a busy, loud classroom? Is it is there somewhere that actually they could go do some alternative activities to have a great start to the day, essentially, and to build up a really positive experience of school? But it's absolutely worth unpicking and trying to explore further what it is that's actually causing that level of school refusing, because it's a form of communication, and I think your child's clearly telling you that they're unhappy or unable to cope with probably a variety of things. So certainly trying to unpick what that is, and then working with the schools to put a plan in place is mutually beneficial for everybody.
Brilliant, thanks, Claire. Next one is: we don't get Coke bottle effect. My 11-year-old daughter retreats, ruminates, and is exhausted and almost depressed. Doing homework is a struggle, even though she's academically very bright. She started ADHD meds this week, and that has made it even more zombied in the evening. Do you have any suggestions to help her with these depressive type thoughts, and how can I get her to open up, or do you think I should just leave her?
Oh, so it's really tricky, because you've done really well there to recognise some of the more difficult kind of behaviours. So actually, when we see big behaviours, when we see the shouting, the screaming, the biting, those big behaviours, it's easy to say, oh, this is because of, but actually even more so is those kind of really withdrawn behaviours, but ultimately they're the same. It's the same issue. So I would say all the things that we've talked about today may be really useful. So those grounding activities, anything to reduce the level of anxiety, but again, to speak to the school about that actually the demands of the current curriculum is really tricky, and is impacting on that young person. And so to think about what may be useful, again about those reasonable adaptations, what may be useful in supporting the young person throughout the day, so that you didn't have that build up and you didn't have that that really withdrawn those withdrawn behaviours.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks, Claire. Next one is: hi, can I ask what a movement break constitutes as? School keep telling me that our 6-year-old is having movement breaks, which is refilling her water bottle. She's very sensory, needs to spin, jump and run. We are seeing increased meltdowns at the end of the day. School are unwilling to help with sensory-based movement breaks. So the question is, like, what constitutes as a movement break?
Yeah, an ideal movement break would be that kind of that sensory circuit type, you know, kind of, so, you know, identifying what kind of movement is useful. So what kind of sensory seeking, you know, what's the young person seeking essentially, and then building in, you know, that into the day. That would be movement breaks. There's not one movement break, so a movement break would be different for every child. So really you would want to be some, you know, it would be a mixture of something which is alerting, so an activity which alerts the child, something that grounds them, and then something that calms them, and then and kind of those would combine together. So it wouldn't, I mean, it would be for the school to explain to you why that's effective. So actually going and sometimes that time away from class may be effective for some children, but you sort of indicated there that actually what you're saying is you're aware that your child needs more specific sensory circuits. And again, that might be about learning for the school and about the school's ability to you know, kind of deliver. But again, those can be delivered so easily with very, very minimum equipment and in a really small time scale, probably no longer than it would take to go and refill your water bottle and come back out, you know, back into class. So they're not time, you know, they're not kind of really time heavy either. So I think it's certainly worth exploring further what how the movement for the water bottle supports the sensory needs of that young person, and whether there would be some better options. So for us, I mean, there's all, you know, so some of our young people really get a good kind of feedback from a lot of heavy work. So it might be that they go and do a variety of exercises around kind of push, pull, carrying heavy objects, being squished by a yoga ball, anything weighted. It may be that some of our young people like to go outside and go on the monkey bars and kind of swing and kind of have that movement back and forth. It may be that some of our young people have a kind of a board that they sit on and they kind of whiz up and down, and kind of, again, that back and forth movement is, you know, really effective for some of our young people. So it's really individualized, and we're really lucky that we have our own occupational therapists within our schools, and so they complete a full sensory profile assessment, and that really helps us to understand. So actually our sensory breaks are really tailored to the needs of the young people, and what, so if we get it wrong, we could be doing some activities that actually heighten and make children more alert, rather than kind of getting them back into the space for learning. So it's something that they're really quite skillful to put together, really easy to deliver, but really quite, you know, the why we're doing what we're doing is the really kind of the bit that needs the thinking about.
Great, thank you. Next question is, my son stopped being able to mask at school and subsequently he was expelled. He is 6 and currently not in school. He's much more settled and completing lots of work at home, but having him off school is not a long-term solution. How would you suggest we deal with his overload and masking when he does go back to school?
Oh, I think it's really really important to find the right school for him to go back to. I think the challenge is that you sound so aware of, you know, he was masking, and then he got to a point where he wasn't able to mask anymore, and sometimes that can come with like a change, you know, as children get older and kind of move from a reception setting, which is all sort of that continuous level of play, and then into year 1 where learning becomes often more formal. And so actually it's quite common to see a change of behaviour because of the change of demands that are then placed upon children. So, and I suppose one of the things that we picked up on earlier in the presentation was that kind of misunderstanding about some of those behaviours and how it can lead to young people, you know, not ultimately being in the right setting for them, or not having the right curriculum adaptations for them. So I think I would advise, obviously, for you to think. I don't know whether you said whether you were, the plan was to, whether it was a permanent exclusion or whether it was a suspension with a view of returning to the same school, but either way, you know, kind of the school day and the demands and the curriculum needs to look different. And you know, it may be, obviously, as time goes on, that, you know, mainstream provisions are for all children. They are for the majority of children, and the majority of SEN children do really well in mainstream provisions. But for some children, they would need a much more specialist environment.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Claire. And that's all we've got time for with the